So I understand that you all are executive MBA students, but you're really like workers like during the day. But you still have that same, we were talking about this, y'all still sit in the back. Still sit in the back, no matter what, right? No matter how old you get, you're gonna still sit in the back. Nobody wants to sit up front, but that's okay. All right, so what I thought I'd do today is a couple things. One is just tell you a little bit about P&G, and hopefully all of you all are P&G customers of one sense or another. So 1837, we're one of the few oldest companies kind of still around. And we operate, you see there, in 70 countries, and the brand. So we're working our way toward 5 billion consumers. So typically what I try to do is have people sort of stand up in the room and like you raise your hand, okay, how many people use Tide or whatever. Usually I can get about everybody to have one P&G product. There's usually one person in the corner somewhere, you know, that like grew their own stuff for their own soap, and they grew, I mean, you know, they just sort of, they use tree bark for their shampoo and, you know, shaving and things. So one person, but generally most of you do. So Crest users, Tide, Pampers, not personally, but you know, for your children, Downy, or let's see, Gillette, yeah, see, there you go. Let's see, Secret, yeah. So you'll see just about everybody. Did I name something that nobody had something out of that list so far? Bounty, Charmin, see, yeah. So I got everybody this time, so good. There's no sort of bark shavers in this room. But we're the world's largest consumer goods company. And so generally in the US we have a 99% household penetration, so you could open up the cabinet in anybody's house in the US and you can almost always find at least one P&G product. So consumers are a big thing to us. You'll see here the kind of brands that we have. And in some countries the name is a little different, but for the most part there are brands and names that you recognize. So we are a brand company, and we have $25 billion brands. So Pampers is one of those, Crest is one of those, Tide, Oral-B, you know, all those kind of brands. Okay? So, names that you know. So one of the questions I was asked was sort of how I progressed. And it's not quite a promotion every 18 months. So don't let my boss hear that. And it's not quite like that. But at P&G, what we do, however, is we do move quite often. And the reason for that is so that we get, as leaders, the wide breadth of what the company is like. So on average, about every 3 years or so, people change assignments. Sometimes it's, you know, promotion-based, sometimes it's not. But what I thought I'd do is at least tell you sort of the 2-minute, 3-minute view of 32 years. Okay, so it's like the movie that kind of really speeds up fast. That's what I'm about to do. All right, so I'm originally from Gary, Indiana, north of state here, and was at Purdue. I came through the Business Opportunity Program, which I was just commenting how I am very, very clear, and I've said this for 32 years, that I attribute a lot of my work ethic and what I do to Purdue, as well as the Business Opportunity Program. Dr. Cornell Bell was the founder of that program. That program still exists. And my son came through the program last summer. And what it did, at least I'll give you the most recent version, the 2014 version of it, for my son is when he came into Purdue, so he graduated from high school, he had a week, and then he was at Purdue, which is a little better. When I graduated from high school, I graduated on Thursday, I was at Purdue Monday. Okay, he had a whole week off. A lot of things are different. He's got Wi-Fi, he's got all sorts of things that I didn't have back after fire was invented when I started. I'm not really kidding a lot, because there were no computers, there was no internet, there was no Wi-Fi, there was nothing. No Starbucks, none of that stuff. But anyway, but coming through that program, by the time you then get to the fall, when now the other freshmen are here, it's like it's easier, right? Because you know the campus, you know college is not quite so scary, and things like that. So I came through Krannert. My degree is industrial management and computer science. So I spent, you know, half my time here in Krannert. I spent the other half of my time in the computer science building, which is a very different building today. But back then, like I said, there was no internet, no PCs, no Wi-Fi. So when people stayed out for rock concerts today, we stood and slept out overnight to use the terminals, because it was either terminals or punch cards, literally. And you know, for the young, when I talk about that to younger employees who now I am older than many of them have been alive, but when I talk about that, they had never seen a punch card except if you go to the Smithsonian. And that's what I learned to program on at Purdue. So, but I have fond memories of that because I do know how to program. If I had to, right now, had to do it, I probably could do it. It might take me a couple of days to sort of figure out the first line, but I could do it. That's my degree. And then I graduated from Purdue in December in 3.5 years. That's the other thing that Bob did for me, was it gave me a head start, so that I was always a half a semester ahead. So I was able to graduate early, but I also went in the summers and things like that. So when I started at P&G, I started at the end of January because I was tired. And I sat in my mother's house for 30 days with my pajamas on, eating popcorn with the door closed. And I said, I'm going to be working. It's funny, I said, I'm going to be working for the next 30 years. I'm going to like just sit here. And 32 years later, here I am, still working. So corporate headquarters for P&G is in Cincinnati. So we always talk about all roads lead to Cincinnati. I started as a systems analyst, and I did sort of all sorts of things, from big mainframe applications when I started to artificial intelligence, the other extreme. Back then also, email was a novelty, right? And we were one of the first companies to actually use it. To the point now, 30-some years later, we overuse it still. And I kind of claim credit or blame, in terms of how you want to do that from an email standpoint. Then I moved to Jacksonville, Florida. And in Jacksonville was the first chance I had to interact and manage people who were not only IT people. So I had both salespeople and IT people. You could not get farther apart than those two functions, right? So IT people, very logical, very sort of step-by-step. Salespeople, nothing's logical, and it's sort of like however you can position whatever you can, okay? So, but I had both of those to deal with. And that was a very growthful experience in and of itself, in terms of how do you do that, because we still had the same goal. We still have to sell to the customer, right? One is just more with technology, but we still had that same goal. So that was in Jacksonville, Florida. I came back to Cincinnati, and then I took on our global telecommunications at that time, and then global workplace, which was PCs and things like that, and then began to work in part of the other functions around systems, so whether it's our marketing or R&D as well. In 2000, the company as a whole restructured. So we went from being on a country-led basis to one where the business unit led, so where the P&L moved. The P&L was, before that was all driven by the country. Now the P&L is driven strictly by the business unit. So if you are the brand manager for Pampers, you own it all the way down to the country level. Big, huge change. As part of that, we also created shared services. So we took out of every business unit things that was not unique to that. So accounting services, IT services, HR kind of service like payroll, benefits, those kind of things. And we put them all together in a shared services organization. So that's what we did, and I was part of that. At one point along the way, there was a thought that we should outsource, collectively the company thought, all of our shared services to one company, and that was EDS. And we went through this process, and I was on the side to be outsourced. So I was on the receiving end of that. And that process went for 18 months, and literally at the 15th hour, not the 11th hour, the 15th hour, our CEO at the time decided not doing it. I mean, literally, contracts in front of him, stack this big, didn't sign it. Very next morning, he gets on the webcast. We were all waiting to say, hear that it's all done and whatever. And he said, it was a 4-minute webcast, not signing it, we're going to go on and do something else. Most shocking thing I'd ever seen at that point. And instead what we did was decided, because part of the problem was we were concerned with putting all of our eggs in sort of one basket. The shared services organization actually ran the lifeblood, the systems for the company, and having to depend on one company for that just not made him feel good. So instead what we did was we did a best-of-breed approach. So outsourcing IT infrastructure, some of the HR processes like payroll, travel, those kind of things, our facilities management, and did 4 of those. But we've now been doing this for 18 months. So like I said, I was on the receiving end of that. And that's, when you're managing people, that's a very hard thing to live through. People don't know, are they going to have a job? Next month, where's the job going to be? So we were determined to do it as quickly as possible so that people could get an answer and could make life decisions. So instead of outsourcing everything, we did the best of breed, and I was picked to lead one myself. So I now became from being on the receiving end to being the one to do it for IT. And because, I was determined, as well as my boss, to move as fast as possible, we had 2,000 people that were impacted by this. To move as quickly as possible, we went from RFP to signed contract in 94 days, which the lawyer said can't be done, which everybody in the industry said can be done, and we kind of said, so to watch us do it. Because it was really important to us for the people to have decisions about their lives. At the time, it was the largest outsourcing project in the industry. It was a $3 billion deal over 10 years. And that was the largest that had ever occurred. My job was to do that and to get 2,000 people safely from P&G to HP. And that was in 2003. So I led that. Now, during that, from a career standpoint, I was the technology part, maybe 5% of what I did. I was a cocktail party lawyer, cocktail party HR person, cocktail party purchasing person. I knew just enough to be dangerous. But to do something like that, you have to have all of those components. So in my career, when I talk about sort of what are the pivotal moments, and I'm sure all of you have them, this was the first one of those. Because doing all sorts of things that were outside of my natural function helped me grow in ways I wasn't planning on at that point. Then it came to, okay, now you got to run this thing. You did it 94 days, good for you, but now you have to live with what you did. So I created the governance organization and got that started over a 2-year period. The other part of what we try to do too is give people broad exposure, because we run in 70 plus countries. So then I moved to Geneva, Switzerland, and that was in 2006, and I had responsibility then for our shared services, but for our Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa business. So we covered actually 114 countries. So I'd leave on Monday, and then I'd come home on Thursday. And it was, I might be in Russia on Monday, I might be in South Africa Tuesday, I might be in Egypt Wednesday, I could be in Kazakhstan on Thursday. And again, but it was about delivering those services in each of those businesses. So I did that. That's when I learned that my husband's ability for foreign languages was not very good. It was awful, as a matter of fact. Just as a side story, so my husband was in the Army well before we got married. So he was in Germany for 4 years. So German was his thing. Well, we weren't in Germany. We were in Geneva, where they speak French. I'm thinking, how hard this can this be? Like, he speaks German, he can speak French. Nope, not so much. So, and part of, the relocation, like, they give you, like, translation, training for, like, French. I took French in high school, 4 years. We all told to take French and whatever, and then you don't use it. Well, all of a sudden it started coming back to me, which was good. So I can actually see things and understand them, and over time, speak enough to get by. My husband, on the other hand, went to French lessons, and the French teacher said she thought he had a speech impediment, which he doesn't have, ever. Has never had one. And then, so that was sort of one clue. The other clue that I found that he was like useless when it came to French was we were on a sort of a visit, a look-see visit before we went. And we were checking in, we were going from Geneva to Paris. And the woman at the reservations desk said, bon voyage. It's a fairly common term we've all heard, right? He said, bumpty bump, and he kept moving. And I said, what did you say? He said, I said what she said. No, you didn't. She said bon voyage. That's what I said. You said bumpty bump. No, I said what she said. She said that. I mean, he was serious, and he argued with me about this. Now, we're traveling with other PG people, and they are dying laughing sort of around us. And he was quite serious. And I said, I don't think this is going to work. We're not going to be able to do this. The next point came when we were very close to the French border, living in Geneva. Geneva is surrounded, right? We live 5 minutes from the French border, so we can go over there to go grocery shopping or whatever, and you always go through the douane, which is the customs border. And invariably, we get pulled over because you can only take so much meat and so forth. So we pull up, my husband rolls down the window. Yes, rolls down the window like this, roll him up window. And the customs official sticks his head in, speaks a slew of French, just rattles it off. My husband's response, no, I do not have a shiny mustache. And I said, dear, I'm pretty sure that, I don't know what he said, but I'm sure it wasn't that. So, you learn to adapt and adjust. So he stopped talking in French. He would go to the grocery store and then started doing the charades like, this is a chicken, when you'd go to the counter to get chicken, and moo. And so the butcher people knew that he'd come in and he'd go, moo for beef. And I wish I'd taken movies because it would have made me a fortune. Anyway, but at the same time, living in another country is different than visiting. When you have to go through the douane and you have to get your groceries and you have to be able to get your groceries and you can't tell what that thing on the jar says. Is that mayonnaise or is that cleaning product? You can't tell. So the same thing from a business standpoint. You know, when you're in the office and they're speaking like 12 languages all around you in the elevator. That's when I pull out Pig Latin, because at the time that was when I had for sure. And they didn't heard of Pig Latin. They didn't know that it wasn't a real language. But to them, you know, it sounded good. But you learn how to navigate and grow as a business leader. Coming out of that, I was a different person, for sure. Which is my second pivotal sort of career move. Because outside the U.S., I was an American first and a woman second. Period, in that order. There was no color issue at all, but I was an American first and a woman second. So that's how people saw me, and I had to deal with that scenario. I had a group of 30 men in Saudi Arabia that reported to me. And back then, you know, we had an office that had a few women in it, but they were on a separate floor, the whole bit. Well, I was, you know, I came in and I was on the same floor with everybody else because that's where we had to meet. And if you closed your eyes, it sounded like any other P&G meeting. But you opened it, you know, and it looked different. But they couldn't be nicer, they couldn't be more engaging than anywhere else. So it's also one of the things that teaches you the world is very different than what you see on television. It got very, very small. Save for my children. My children were 6 and 10 when we moved. My oldest son, Teo, who's here a freshman, when he was in 5th grade, his field trip, now our field trips were to the zoo, went to the art museum. His field trip was to Provence for a week. I hadn't even been to Provence, France, for a week. And they have to carry their passport. They're in 5th grade, and they're responsible for it. So it's a very different cultural environment. So as a result of that, both my sons are very, there's nothing they don't fear. They don't fear anything. They'll meet and talk to anybody because of that. They have friends all over the world. And when we came back, they continued to travel every summer outside of the U.S. So my son came back, first summer, he went to China. You know, second summer, he went back to Europe. He went to the Galapagos Islands, he went to Australia. The other one, same thing. Because they have no fear of anything because the world is very small for them. Very, very different people. Okay? And then comes to the third sort of pivot. And in 2010, we had a new CEO who wanted to do something different from diversity. And we had been known for being strong in diversity, but had sort of gotten the wind out of our sails a little bit. So he wanted to do something different. So what he wanted to do was to put a line leader in the role as Chief Diversity Officer. So I was the first to do that, on top of the other job, by the way. So I had everything else, diversity officer on top. It's another one of those things where I thought, okay, how hard can this be? Clearly I'm diverse. I've got this. How hard can it be? And I learned it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because it's one of those topics that is full of emotion, 98% of it. I'm an IT person, computers don't talk. It's all good, right? HR, 98%. I don't have those capabilities. HR people, is anybody here in HR? Okay. You have an HR face? You know what an HR face is? You do know what an HR face is, don't you?
I've only been in it 3 years.
That doesn't matter.
I know.
But you know what it is, don't you? What is it?
I don't know what you're going to there.
Okay, well, so let me tell you what it is. So if I told you, let's say, you know, somebody I know this morning jumped out of a building, committed suicide. This would be the reaction that you'd have on your face. Mm-hmm. There would be nothing. Floyd Mayweather won a fight. This is what your face looks like. You know, there's snakes crawling up the side of those walls. This is what your face looks like. There's no emotion, nothing, right here. That's an HR face. I don't have one of those, okay? So, but HR people are born with those. I don't have one of those. So, but I have huge respect now, though, for HR professionals, because as leaders, we experience things, you know, a couple times in our life, crazy things, right? the things you're like, why would they do that? You experience like a couple of those in your life, in your career. HR professionals, every day, multiple times a day. And my respect for them went up through the roof. And the kinds of things that I experienced, I never thought I would. So, including, I had knee surgery in the middle of all that, a knee replacement surgery. And my reaction to the surgery didn't go so well. A lot of scar tissue, so I ended up in a wheelchair for a time and things like that. I thought I knew what it was like to be a person with a disability, right? Because that was part of my job. Of course I know that. I'm very astute, I'm very aware. It's not until you're in a wheelchair and you have to be, and you're, you have to travel, right? Okay, I got this. People push around in the airport, it's all good. Okay, then what? Right? Travel by yourself, then what? You get there, like, how do you get in the cab? Right? What happens in a wheelchair? How do you get to the hotel? Like, how do you get to the floor? And in New York, I was traveling to New York, and I had to go to some place where the lobby was on the 5th floor. You check in, you pull in down here, so how do you get up there? Well, okay, and I'm not used to wheeling myself. I don't know that. How do you get in the bathtub? It's just all sorts of things. And when you're in a crowd, people don't see you. Right? We went to a football game, they bump right into you. My leg is sitting straight out, bump right into you. So it's not until you have those experiences do you really understand. So this, by far, was the third one. And I had responsibility for this around the world. It was the first time ever we had a global diversity plan. Everything from the US to Saudi Arabia to Asia. And it was the first time we had global metrics and anything like that. So that in and of itself was an experience on top of all the other work at the same time. Then in July of 2013, I was able to hand it over to another line leader who's now in R&D. And our strategy from a diversity standpoint is to not have HR people do that role, because people then sort of brush it off as an HR thing, versus having a line leader do that. And we have now more people who are attuned to what diversity issues are. So people ask me, were you sad about giving it up? No. I am grateful for the experience, but you go with, good luck with that. I'm here to help, but no. And I think that's one of the things, again, that's one of those growthful experiences. Then I picked up a lot of sort of the core parts from an IT standpoint in last January. I was sort of back to where I started in terms of the kind of work, but I had more responsibility for it. And it's at that point in time I decided that we hadn't made enough IT architectural advancements, because when we outsourced, we lost a bit of our ability to be able to do that. So I picked that back up in January, and then in July was appointed the function officer for IT. We still had a CIO, but I had responsibility for the talent, the IT talent. It's also at that time that the then new CEO we had at that time, who was our new old CEO, because he was our old CEO, he came back at that point, but he wanted me to focus primarily on cybersecurity. So that was last July, so I've been spending a lot of time on cybersecurity the last 9 to 10 months. And then this past January, was appointed CIO. So that's after 32 years, literally, and lots of different things. So I tell you that story because one of the questions was sort of like, what's your career been like? It hasn't been normal. If I had, when I was leaving Purdue, somebody said, what are you gonna do in 5 years? Whatever I would have guessed would have been wrong, clearly. I couldn't have made that up if I tried. And that's because, and that's the way I've always been, sort of, I don't try to worry about sort of what's 10 years out, because it's gonna change anyway. I don't have control over that, so I try not to worry about that. And it's worked out, at least for me. So mine is all about what I can do the best I can do, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So you see here, you already heard about, sort of what I do. We've got about 2,500 IT professionals around the world. We went through a couple rounds of having non-IT professionals as our CIO. So my boss right before me, who's retiring, was the first IT professional, so I was only the second one. Before that, there had been a finance person, a sales person, and again, it was a recognition of what IT could do for the business. All right, so talk a little bit about family. That would be me, with the chubby legs. That's my dad. And I talk about this because it matters in terms of what I define for success. And he taught me to stand up for what's right, not necessarily what's easy. And a lot of times people will go for the easy mark. This is proof that I did have hair at some point. It's my kindergarten graduation picture. So cap and gown and the whole bit. And then, but this is the reason I do what I do, because of my boys, to make a world a better place. And that's the way I talk to them about it as well. So I do all of those things because to me, at the end of the day, that's what all of this is about. But I did kind of wonder, are they going to ever grow into those ginormous heads of theirs? You know, like little kids have really big heads. Theirs were huge. And then I worried about that. But actually, they did. So these are my boys. Teo, you heard, is a freshman. His last exam is tonight. And then Tennyson is a freshman in high school. And they are completely different children on some things, but completely the same. But they're also their best friends. So they're like 98% of the time they are as close as you can be. The 2% is the only time that they're in conflict, and I stay out of the way when that happens. How I spend my time. So, a couple different things here. Both of my boys are sports fanatics. Neither my husband or I are, so we think it skipped a generation somehow. But they both play football. This is my younger one. This is Teo when he was a senior. Played football. He was a linebacker. So lots of football games out in the cold. The other one, so this one is great. Get him, Teo, get him. This one is a running back. Run, Tennyson, run. Okay, so it's a whole different experience. But he's also a more all-around player. So we go from football season to basketball season to something else. All right, so very different. Teo was a one-sport kid. That was okay with me. My other obsession is with the Container Store. So I'm an organization addict. I'm proud of that. And my younger son says I have OCD, and I'm like, okay, I'm good with that, because you could have OCD on other things and what not so good. So this is me in the Container Store with the manager. I'm there every week because I think everything can be put in order. And then the latest one is up in the corner. Those are our puppies, Floyd and Dixie. They're boxer puppies. Get it? Floyd, the boxer. Get it? All right, so I didn't name them. I went to Manila in February of this year. I came home. That's what was at my door. Literally. I didn't know about it. I wasn't consulted. 2 siblings, gonna be 100 pounds each. Yeah, nice, right. Been married 22 years, not sure we're gonna make it to 23. Anyway, okay. No, this is my husband's great idea, okay. Mr. I don't like animals, all of a sudden we have 2 puppies at home, okay. But anyway, but they're great. I grew up with dogs, I love dogs, and they are fantastic. Okay, my son Teo, you know, hopefully Cranner graduate 2018, that's the goal. And he, again, came through BOP, and it has done just phenomenal for him in terms of his confidence. Between the two of them, Tennyson is much more aggressive, outgoing. Tennyson's freshman class president. You know, he will go argue anything off of anybody and win. You know, Teo was just like, you know what, you go ahead and do that. So he's much more reserved, but determined. So that's my Cranner graduate. This is my husband. I don't cook ever. He is a professional cook. He's a gourmet cook. I can cook. I just choose not to, and I let him think that I can't cook. All works out. This is my mother. She lives with us. She's 84. And one of the reasons I started from a technology standpoint, when I grew up, we had the first of everything technology-wise. Now, back then, we're not talking about anything impressive. We had the first Betamax. You know what a Betamax was? Big video thing, right? You know, tape goes out. My mother, when she retired, only retired because we were moving to Europe and she wanted to go. But she would have 6, 8 PCs in her bedroom. Only 2 of them worked. The other 4, she just, because she's a depression child, we have to keep them just in case. But, you know, she lives with us. She's on her second MacBook and her second iPad. When we moved to Geneva, she was in her 70s and told all her friends, I'm not sending letters. Y'all need to get an email address because that's when I'm gonna do this. She uses Skype, she uses FaceTime, and is the first to complain literally when the internet is down. I was in Russia, internet was down, called me in Russia. IT support for the house. They're in Geneva. Grandma can't get on the internet. This is a problem. Okay, so, and this is the other stuff I do. I'm on the board of a for-profit company. It's an insurance company, Cincinnati Financial. You see here other things. And then probably the last thing is that when my boys were little, I was trying to find something I could do with them because I was purposeful about, you know, doing a lot of things but making sure that I had things I do with them. And I wanted to do something physical. I wanted ballet. They didn't want ballet. So we started martial arts. And that was when my younger one started when he was 5, Teo started when he was 7. and we're still all in it today. So I'm a second-degree black belt as a result of that, and they're both brown belts. So it became something that, for me, turned out to be more than what I intended to do. So, talk a little bit about IT trends. Anything surprising here? Does everybody know what the cloud is? Now, I don't mean the one outside, right? Everybody knows the cloud. Nothing should be surprising. In general, these are sort of the trends you see. Cloud, big data, analytics, the internet of everything. I have my Apple Watch, right? Collecting data. And then cybersecurity. So probably any IT organization, that's what you're going to hear a lot of, those three. What I thought I'd do is tell you a little bit in terms of how I think about cybersecurity and kind of what's going on. So the first is, Barney Fife is not a Navy SEAL. Anybody know who Barney Fife is? Andy Griffith Show, right? Showing my age, right? Barney Fife, one bullet, like in the pocket. And companies that have a false sense of security really have Barney Fife, like guarding the doors, when you really need Navy SEALs. And some of that comes because things have changed so much in the last couple of years. If you're not recognizing that, you think you got Navy SEALs, which what you really have is Barney Fife. As far as I'm concerned, it's us versus them. The them being the dark actors that want to breach things. Them being the dark actors that want to steal credit card information. They want to steal your health records. They want to steal your social security numbers. The us is all the rest of us. And the them are winning. Because in the good old days, people break into your house, steal your stuff, go home, not tell anybody. Today, they break into your house, steal your stuff, tell everybody they broke into your house, show them what tools they use, give them to you and say, if you break in somewhere else, tell me that and make it better. The collaborations is huge, right? But we can't, in some cases, do that at all legally. In other cases, just don't do it. That's why they're winning. So they're getting exponentially better, faster, much, much, much faster than we are. So that's why the us versus them, and they are definitely winning. In fact, in the credit card industry, anybody work for a financial services or a credit card company? Which company you work for?
Fifth Third Bank.
Fifth Third Bank, okay. So I was talking to somebody who's from a financial services. When there is a breach of credit cards, and let's say they steal 1 million credit card numbers, and then you come along and you buy them, like you buy 1,000 of those, and let's say 25 of those don't work. They've got customer service. They will refund your money or give you replacements. That's how they've got a business model. They want you to come back. That's what's going on. And people think that they're not organized. They're incredibly organized, incredibly smart, and getting better every day. Hope's not a strategy. I hope they don't get us. I hope they don't break in. Not a strategy. You have to have a strategy. And we've moved from a strategy of the moat, which is we're going to protect all the edges, but once you're in, you're good because I trust who you are. That's no longer our strategy. Our strategy is I assume you're already in. So then it's all about keeping you from getting out with the stuff I don't want you to have. Very different strategy. But a lot of companies don't even have a strategy, so you have to have a strategy. I hope they don't get us is not one. Just on the journey to cut off of there, never say never. So companies that say we'll never be breached, can't say that anymore. Everybody at some point, if they haven't already, will be. And you have to constantly assess the capabilities, whether that's the people, the technology, whatever it is. The saying, there's no place for your head. Okay? Same thing around hope is not a strategy. People just sort of say, you know what, we are never going to be, we don't have a business. Who wants the Caterpillar business? Who wants this? Nobody wants that. Again, that's sticking your head in the sand about it. And I spent a lot of time learning from other companies because to me, learning is a gift, particularly in this space. Because somebody has already gone through or done something that we can learn from. And when you stop learning, that means you don't understand. Practice, practice, practice. Assume that they're in also means assume you're going to have a breach. That's not the time to sort of figure out what you want to do. So practicing sort of assuming, just like that disaster recovery, we used to do those drills, still do. We need to do the same thing around cybersecurity breaches. And then be a duck. I say, okay, what's that got to do with Barney Fife, sand, right? That means calm on the surface, but swimming like crazy underneath the water. Because in a crisis, that's what people need to see, right, from a leadership standpoint. And it's not if, it's when. It will happen. So if you make the assumption that it will happen, you act differently than if you assume that it won't, right? Okay, so this was the other question I was supposed to answer. What does it take to succeed? And the way I do this, because I don't know how to answer that question other than in one way, and that's to talk about my beliefs. And I had a CEO once who said that you have to know what you believe, and you have to tell people what you believe so they know sort of why you're operating the way you do. So I did that about 5-6 years ago, and it changes, every now and then. But for the most part, for the last couple of years, it's been about the same. So the first is knowing what's important to you. If you don't know what's important to you, you can't make a decision about when things come up at the last minute. So going to Geneva, it was important for us. My husband and I had already decided that was an experience we wanted to give our children. So it didn't matter, like when it came, okay, we're ready to go. It was a 10-minute decision, literally, because it took me 9 minutes to get him to answer his cell phone, right, about where to go. He wanted to go someplace warm. That's not what we got, but that's not what was important. And doing things that makes you uncomfortable or scaring you every day. And people get really comfortable in whatever their comfort zone is. So the whole chief diversity officer thing and that HR thing was not comfortable. And I learned to get out of my comfort zone. The outsourcing thing, not comfortable. Being a lawyer, being a person, I was so glad I didn't go to law school at that point. I'm like, this is why I didn't go to law school. But knowing that and having that experience was good. I tell people sometimes, if you drive the same way home every day, take a different route. If you don't like broccoli, eat broccoli. And see if it makes you turn green. But do something every single day. Never, ever, ever stop learning. As far as I'm concerned, the day I stop learning is the day I die, because there's always something to be learned. In martial arts, we talk about the beginner's mind, which means that you sort of start from this stance of, I don't know anything, so I'm willing to accept and learn everything. And do the one thing that can't be done. This is Diana Nyad, who I met, and I met her 3 months before she did that swim, the last swim, the one where she made it from Cuba to Florida, and it was the most fascinating person I ever met in my life, because at the time she was 63, is that what, 63? And people kept telling her it can't be done. She just said, just nobody's done it yet. That doesn't mean it can't be done. And she did not make it to the Olympics, but that didn't stop her. So she was determined to do the thing that couldn't be done. Just because nobody's done it doesn't mean it can't be done. And that was one of the most fascinating conversations I'd ever had. Because I don't know sort of what's going to happen 5 years out, 10 years out, I can't control that. What I can control is what I do, which is doing the best I can at what I do every day, no matter what that is. At the end of the day, if I'm laying there at night, can I look up and say, okay, over what I did today, did I do the absolute best I possibly could? And if I can't say no, that's not good. And a lot of times if you ask yourself that question, do you get a yes every day? You get a yes 50% of the time? So this is one of those things where I drill it into my children. I don't know that they always do it, but it's the one thing you can control more than anything else. Honor commitments or don't make them. And I believe this from if it's a 2-year-old person all the way up to an 82, because if I can't do it and I can't make it, I'm not going to do it, because that's a disappointment. And that's somebody else is counting on me to do that. So that's another one of my beliefs. And if you see something, say something. Now this is a big thing at P&G around ethics. It's part of our values. There are some companies where this is not true. And I know that for a fact, that if you see something, it's not your business. There are countries like this. Geneva's like this. Geneva is very clear about what you're supposed to do and what you aren't. It's a country of rules. Even the rules are illogical. So I had a friend who lived in a flat. She'd been there a couple weeks. She's on the second floor of a 3-4 flat apartment. She can hear on the 3rd floor a husband beating his wife to a pulp. She can hear it. But she's in a French-speaking country. It's not 911. What number do you call? So she calls her landlady and says, I don't know what to do. He's beating her up. The landlady says, it's not your business. It's not your business. You call the police, they won't come. It's a domestic issue. That's not the value that I have at all. Don't give away your power. I don't get upset about things I can't control, because when you do that, you give it away to something or somebody else. And know what I can and can't control. And there's a lot of that, particularly in a lot of companies that are big, and where your decision rights are. And I see people get frustrated about that all the time. Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Okay, what can you control? And be worried about that. This one was a really hard lesson for me to learn around putting your mask on first. When I was in Geneva, traveling a lot, and in December of one year, I got sort of this cough. Just like, and then it turned into one of those. And it went on for like 2 months. I was on a trip in January, and I went to Morocco, and I went to Egypt, and literally by the time I got to the last stop, and I'm going to places where people are presenting to me, the table is littered with tissues. It was nasty. Tissues and cough drops and cough syrup, and and I'm not hearing a word anybody's saying. That night in the hotel, I have to sit up because I can't sleep because I cough, right? So to sit up to try to get the coughing down. One of the guys said, well, what room you were in? I told him the room. I said, why? He said, because I could hear you coughing all night. So I get back, and in Geneva, they have still what I call the Marcus Welby service. You can call a number, and a doctor will come to your house 24 hours a day with a little bag of medicine. It's actually quite cool, right? 24 hours a day. Within 2 hours. Excellent, excellent service. And he said, you have bronchitis. Nah, I don't have bronchitis. It's cold. Bronchitis. And it's getting worse. I got grounded, and what started off as turned into full-blown bronchitis that could become chronic. And it's because I didn't put my mask on first. So now I do. So now I think about sleep and exercise and nutrition, which I never did. Those things kind of fall away when things get heavy and the list gets long. So this is a big one for me. The last one is one of my favorite quotes, and it was written in 1928. If you think about it, the illiterate of the 21st century are the people who, can't read or write, but those who can't learn, unlearn and relearn. So I have lots of those. The other one I like is Eleanor Roosevelt had a lot of great ones too. But the point is that learning, no matter what it is sort of the core of what I believe. Okay? I've gone way over what I thought I was going to do, but we still have time for questions if anybody has any. Yes, no? Don't be like Stuart. Come on. Come on. Questions? Comments?
I have a question.
Thank you.
Alexander Alfrey. In your career, and it's kind of a revealing question, I suppose, if there was one thing you did that you regret, what would it be professionally?
I'm trying to pick which one I'm going to talk about. I got lots of those. Which one it is. Probably it's, here's probably one of the biggest ones. And when I was very young, very, very young, I'm all of 5 feet tall, okay? Vertically challenged, as it were. And I work in a business where 32 years ago, I could be in a room of IT people and be one of 2, 3 women, right? Let alone somebody of color. I could be in a room of technology professionals and get easily intimidated by the doctor, blah, 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 person and the PhD over here, right? I have a bachelor's degree. So intimidation came quickly, right? Really tall guys, 6'2", 6'3", and then they're, using words this big and, you don't know what you're talking about. And I was 20 when I graduated from Purdue. 20. So the intimidation factor was huge, like everywhere I looked. And I didn't understand the role that I had, and what I regret is not knowing it earlier. To the point where somebody said to me, you let suppliers, of all people, intimidate you. Like I didn't know what that meant. I had to think about it for a second. I was like, you're right. Because I've met anybody that had what I thought was they could make up some letters and put it behind their name, and I thought they were important, right? And I thought about that, and I said, that's right. Because what I didn't realize that I was the customer, and by its very nature, gave me something that somebody else didn't have. And it wasn't until then that I knew that I had been giving away my power without even knowing it. And it's not about power and control as much as it is sort of confidence in your voice. I had no voice. So what I really wish I'd done is found my voice earlier. My voice right now, it sounds very loud. Back then it was not. I was more like Teo. Very reserved, introspective. You do the Myers-Briggs thing. I was one of those I-N people, one of those. Clearly I'm not now, but in fact I've redone it. It's like, where the I's go? I'm an E person now. But I wish I had been one of those earlier, because I would have said things to people sooner that might have made a difference on some things. And one of the things I am clear about now is giving crystal clear feedback to employees. Crystal clear. Because I have learned over the years the hard way, not doing that does not do them any good, doesn't do me any good or the company any good. And I really wish I'd done and learned that sooner, because there would have been lots of other people that I would have done that for. And so I had that experience. I had another experience where there was a woman who was she was the same height I was. It was the best thing in the world. But she was several levels above me. And it was one of those PhD kind of people. And he was trying to intimidate everybody. And she leaned across the table with one perfectly manicured finger and told him what to do and where to go. And he shuddered and did it. I'm like, ooh, I like it. So I really wish I had found that sooner, because I would have done a whole lot. I regret not being able to do that sooner.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Clement. My question is on diversity and what we see in corporations today and tying that to experience. What do you think most corporations are not doing correctly, or what they should be doing in that regard? I'm seeing that there's a lot of globalization and systems are becoming more multicultural, and there's a lot of benefit in that. And the second question is that why do most corporations just have diversity as a mantra and not necessarily as the lifeblood of the organization?
Let me answer the second one first. It's because they don't understand the business reason behind doing it. And we understand the business reason. We know we have data, factual data, that shows a diverse team is far more successful, creative, and innovative than one that is homogenous. In our own business, we have this. So that's why we do it. It's a business goal. It has nothing to do with, I mean, it's great that it's like good for the good, but at the end of the day, that's why we do that. We have 100,000 people. At the end of the day, those are investments and assets. You want every single one of those to be able to perform at their absolute best no matter what. Anytime that's not happening, you're not getting the best out of your return on your investment. So that's what we think about it. On the first one, in terms of what companies are not doing, they're not being deliberate. If you ask me, they're not being deliberate and being sort of really looking at it. And this is not just a numbers game at all. This is around assignment planning. This is about giving critical feedback to everybody and training managers on how to do that. But it's about, you have to be deliberate on that. You can't just assume it's going to happen. Doesn't work that way.
Hey, Mom, my question is, how along this path in your career did you choose your mentors? And who did you learn from? And did that strategy change over the years?
So I'm like one of those people that doesn't, there are like companies that have mentor programs. I'm not an advocate of that, because I believe the best mentor relationships happen naturally over time. They develop over time. So I can't say that I picked these 3 people and I'm going after that one. I never did that. There were ones that developed naturally. I might have reported to the person at one point. I might have worked with a person on a project or whatever, but I never did that. I had people come to me, and they still do it, and said, I want you to be my mentor. And I say, well, I don't say no. What I say was, how about this? Let's have a chat a couple times, and let's see kind of what happens out of it. But I'm not going to commit to being a mentor that I don't know if that's going to work, because you and I just may not connect for whatever reason. I may not have what you need. So for me, it's been more about relationships to develop. I have mentors who are levels below me, several, because I believe that there's much to be learned from anybody. Secretaries, as far as I'm concerned, smartest people on the planet, run the company. They know everything. They know how to get stuff done, right? I have huge respect for them. So mentors, I have mentors at all levels, wide. But I don't know that I can give you sort of a list either, for that very reason. There was, right?
First
Mr. Fifth Third Bank.
Yes, ma'am. Obviously, I'm from Cincinnati. I wanted to tell you that my mother retired from P&G after 30 years of service in 2010.
Okay.
It's a very important company to my family. But from a brand management perspective, could you maybe talk strategically about how Procter & Gamble chooses what brands to divest from and which brands to acquire or augment into?
Given the fact that we're divesting of 100 brands, is that what you're asking for? Yeah. So last summer, our CEO and CFO announced that we're going to divest 100 brands. Of 180, we're divesting 100. And it's a really easy answer. So our current CEO is A.G. Lafley. He had retired as our chairman CEO. He went off. I say he went to CEO school, got a higher degree for 4 years, and he came back. And while he was out, he worked for venture capital companies. He wrote a book. The book is called Play to Win. And that's how we decide. So it's about making the strategic choices about where do you have the right to win, right? Where you're going to play, and then where do you have the right to win. So for example, in Africa, let's say in Nigeria. Nigeria has 11 million babies. 11 million. That's more than all of Western Europe. All of it. So strategically, we make diapers. It's a great place to play. Now, how do you win though is a different story. Because if we're going to import diapers, and our competition is making diapers locally, we're not going to win that way. Right? So that's an example of sort of deciding strategically where you're going to play. We were in the medical services business with MD-VIP, which was a concierge medical doctor service. We had no right to win. Where was our right to win? On that. So that's how we decide. It's sort of like, strategically where we're going to play and how we're going to win.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for speaking to us. I wonder, in these many years, has it ever occurred to you, well, let me ask you this way, how many times did you feel that you're no longer going to stay with PNG, and how did you change your mind to stay there?
It's a good question. It was far more frequently early on, very early on, because I wasn't clear about what was important. And I'd been there maybe 2 years when I started looking at MBA programs, thinking that's what would do it. And now you notice I don't have an MBA. I don't even have a master's degree, which is a source of contention between me and my husband, who thinks like, Theo, she's gonna go get a master's degree. I'm like, why? I don't have one to work, I think it also depends on what your field is. I think it's more important to determine that. Now I know I'm saying that in the education place. I know that's heresy. I get it, but sorry, but not all. So I think it depends. There's some degrees that you need a PhD for, and that's really critical, right? Having a psychology degree, I think you should go all the way through if you're gonna do that. But in my field, right, that's not what I needed. So I went through two things. One was looking at MBA programs, decided not to do that. The other was law school. So I had to think about going to law school. Oh my goodness, I'm glad I didn't do that. Because let me tell you why. I went and took the LSAT prep course, and there's this problem about monkeys. I never will forget it. Monkeys. And I looked at that and I'm going, monkeys? And I said, I can't do this. Best decision I ever made. Because I work with a lot of lawyers now, and every day I said, a decision on my part, not do this. My younger son, I am convinced will be a lawyer. I am convinced he will be an excellent lawyer. I'm convinced he'll be president of the U.S. I am convinced. Because he can argue anything, win, and make you think it's the right thing. But that's not me. So it's usually around those times. The other thing too is generally when that question came up, I was in a situation, almost always with a manager, right? Because people leave their managers, not the companies, usually, right? That wasn't going well for whatever reason. And usually I went to one of those people that I trust, and I had a conversation about that. And I had to sort of kind of come back to, okay, what do I really want from a career standpoint versus just this person? So instead of sort of saying I can't deal with it, I try to get to, okay, how can I learn to work with this person, because this is yet another growthful experience. And that's the way I sort of think about it. So there's almost nobody I can't work with at this point. You just learn how to deal with it. I was on maternity leave the first time, and my boss called. He said, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I said, you know what? I'm open to doing anything except one thing. I was just one area over here, like, don't want to do that. Okay? Don't want to work for that person. But anything else, I'm open. Guess what I got when I came back?
Yeah.
That thing. With that person. So that's when I also learned, you know what? I don't have control over this anyway. So how can I then look at it differently in terms of how do I get the best out of that experience? That's why I think I can work with pretty much anybody. And that's why I'm also like really clear around giving feedback to people who are not doing the best for their employees, because people leave their managers. They don't leave companies. Okay, that's a good question.
You mentioned cloud earlier. How is P&G leveraging cloud?
I am driving us aggressively to the cloud. Aggressively. And that's because, in my opinion, it gives you flexibility from an architectural standpoint in terms of being able to do different things, scale up and scale down. Financially, the return is better. Also from a security standpoint, I believe it's better. Because if you think about it, the cloud providers, that's their business. If they have a breach, they're on CNN and like the next 2 minutes, Wolf Blizzard's talking about, right? Plus, usually cloud providers have engineers, 500 to 1,000 of them, who do nothing but that all day long, right? Otherwise, we're Barney Fife, thinking we've got this. So that's one of the other reasons too, is because they're constantly doing that. So I would rather be doing things that help us sell better soap, diapers, and shampoo, right? And leave that to those people who are experts and better at it than we are. That's what I think about it.
Maybe to add on to Faisal's question, what do you do with your existing infrastructure, your existing IT infrastructure? Do you give it to providers, cloud providers, as a managed service, or?
Well, now remember, we're already heavily outsourced.
Okay, so you already have a lot of that.
Remember, so we did that in 2003, so a lot of that is already heavily outsourced. So, but eventually, I'd love to get out of the hardware business completely. So, in my fantasy world, we have no client applications anywhere. They're all something that is equivalent to either a Chrome or something equally as, it's kind of like it's full circle, back to a dump terminal kind of thing, right? But then I can control what data goes, who's got it, who has access to it. I don't have to worry about who's on somebody's hard drive. From an application development standpoint, I know where the data is. I can build, there's APIs to it. There's a lot of upside to it. This is not going to be an easy journey by any question, right? But it's one that I think, even from a financial standpoint, is going to be much better for us, because then we pay for what we drink, as opposed to big, huge things that I have to buy just because we're going to have a surge 1 week out of, 52. There was one. Yeah.
Kristen Allenberg with Logic. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
You're wearing an Apple Watch.
I am.
So when you look at emerging technologies, emerging trends, what are the things that you see on the horizon that are going to change the consumer experience when it comes to P&G?
When it comes to P&G specifically?
Yeah.
We're going to be more intrusive. No, I'm just kidding. Sort of.
You're going to stalk us, aren't you?
No, we're not going to stalk you exactly, but we may tell you that you didn't brush your hard enough on your teeth. Okay? Just brush more, because the Bluetooth in your toothbrush is telling us that. No, but seriously, because it's going to change how we interact with our consumers, right? So for years we relied a lot on consumer panels, right? You put people in the room, ask them what they think, they tell us. And there's flaws with that, obviously. It's like Henry Ford says, if you ask people what they want, to tell you a faster horse, same difference. Who would have said they wanted an iPhone, iPod, iWatch, right? So it will give us a better relationship one-to-one with our 5 billion consumers, to be able to do that, to give them what they need. Everything from, we are a beauty company too. So trying to deliver the right information to women or men when it comes to shaving, for example, on what they should do based on the way their face is, because their face is different than somebody else's face. So how do you do it? So there's all those kind of things. So one of the things that we see is technology is going to play a huge role from a business standpoint, to the point where I see this to be the best time ever to be an IT professional, ever. Because we are so integral to everybody's life right now. We, the royal we of technology, right? And our consumers are like that today as well. So now, it used to be we were the enablers and there was the business. Now we are the business with IT expertise. It's a really cool place to be when you sort of think about it. Because now we're talking about sort of, how do you leverage the fact that there's a smart home? Right, where our consumers are. If there's on Amazon, there's a thing about, there's this thing you put on the washing machine, and I did an order, wait till I get drones to deliver that Tide to the doorstep.
So is it the technology or is it the data? Because those are two totally different professions.
Yes, it's both. It's both. And data is only good if you leverage it right, and you don't drown by it. So I have a chief data officer now, whose job is to make sure that A, we have access to the data in the right way, that we have the technology that allows us to do that, right, which is the other reason why cloud is good, so I can leave the data where it is, right, and deal with it, and have the right data scientists who can use and develop the right algorithms to be able to get at it, so we know what the insights are. So that's why it's both. It's definitely both from our standpoint.
The faculty that were teaching the IS classes, many of them are here.
Is there going to be a test?
We'll decide. I'll put your questions up, your slides up for the test. That's what we'll make.
I'm sure I failed. Go ahead.
Quick question. So, can you also comment, as we are outsourcing all these technologies, where do you see the IT guys adding value so that some of them may not have that perspective?
Well, just as I just said. So for my IT professional, remember, I'm at a consumer goods company. I am not a tech company, right? Our job is to sell soap, diapers, and shampoo better. Our job is to make our consumers' lives better. So that's what it is for me. That's different than when you go talk to Cisco or HP or Apple, or that's going to be different for them. But for me, that's what it is. So it's all about how do I leverage technology. Because of the fact I want my folks to be business leaders with IT expertise, which, by the way, which is why I started with P&G in the first place. When I left Cranard, I had, an offer from IBM and some other places, but for me, it wasn't only about the technology. It was about how do I do that and marry that from a business standpoint. That's why I went to P&G in the first place. That's why for me it was the right thing. So outsourcing, or not even outsourcing anymore, it's more like sourcing, right? That's why the cloud gives me that ability to, like, they're running the operation in a great way. I don't worry about did they, another server up and down. I don't worry about the card or whatever. They're doing all of that, literally, which is what outsourcing didn't quite do. Not quite, right? We still have to worry about it. And that's why there's a difference for me with the cloud for that, because really it's sort of you're outsourcing that, but they really have it now, and I'm sharing that. The scale is truly scale. Amazon Web Services or Google or Microsoft or whatever it is, there's true scale in that. Then my folks are then worried about the data algorithms, for data analytics. That's what they're worried about. That's where the real value is for P&G, is around the consumer, right? So as we innovate products that have technology in them, and I gotta say, I've seen some I kind of go, really? Did y'all ask a baby about this? Because I don't think a baby would like that, what you just did to that diaper. But if you think about it, think about, you could have an app that sort of tells you, I didn't need this, that the diaper is almost full. My sons, you could tell a mile away the diaper was full. I didn't need an app, okay? I didn't need sensors. The sensor was obvious, okay? But still, there's lots you can do around that, right? If you think about it from a sudden infant death syndrome, and if you had a way that the diaper could tell if the baby rolled, think about that. There's all sorts of things. I'm making those up, but your mind can just go wild with ways to think about how technology can help the consumer every day. Whether it's the iWatch and your heartbeat on a regular basis, whether it's putting a contact lens in and having it take your vitals instead of doing a blood test for diabetes. There's just all sorts of things. There's technology underneath all of that an IT professional can help with.
I'm sure you might be getting a lot of requests from your business partners. How do you convince them when they feel that IT is fast enough to deliver whatever the request?
So, make sure I understand the question. So how is it that we can help make sure the business understands it, or that they believe that we'll be fast enough for them? One of the reasons that, and what I didn't say too is, so I talked about shared services. At one point along that journey, all of IT was in shared services, okay? January of this year is the first time we've had a CIO and a president of shared services, so I'm not in shared services anymore. The reason for that is because we still deliver services to the company, payroll, travel services, anything that's technology related. Those things still happen, but my job is to make sure that the rest of the company, the entire company, I have governance end to end across the company to make sure that we are delivering to the business what it needs when it comes to those things, which is why we're business leaders with IT expertise. So that's part of what my job is now, is to do exactly that, because we had moved to only services. So let's say if you were, we have some stores called the Art of Shaving, which are Gillette, they go in and they'll like shave you or whatever. Well, those stores take credit cards. Well, there's technology behind that. Well, that's not one of the services we provide in shared services. So they were left to their own devices to do that. So now part of my job is to make sure that they have what they need from an IT capability standpoint and governance standpoint. Part of this is we have to re-earn some of that credibility because we lost it when they said, oh, no, good luck with that, we're not doing that. But that's exactly what my job is now. So I now have a CTO, whose also job is from a technology standpoint to look around, and I also have a chief data officer, I already mentioned that. But our job as the corporate function is to do exactly that. There was another one I missed somewhere in the middle. Did I get everybody?
Final question. What would you like your legacy to be when your time, if you will, is finished with your career at P&G?
You know, probably a couple things. One is that short women can't lead. No, just kidding. You know, a couple things. One is that I believe in authenticity. So I'm the same way here that I am anywhere else. That also took a lot for me to learn that, right? And I want, part of diversity is allowing people to be able to do that. That's where you get the big benefit from. So that's one thing, right? The second thing is that I want our legacy to be one that is a consumer goods company that leverages technology better than anybody else can. That's huge for me, because I'm gonna still be a shareholder, because there's like goals on the other side of this. And I want those IT professionals to be part of that, right? You know, we went through the years of technology. We just want to sweep it under the rug. Technical mastery was a dirty word. None of that now. So we are the business, you know, that has IT expertise, just like an HR expertise or finance expertise. We're at the table. To me, that would be huge. That would be huge, because then I'm leveraging the power of 2,500 people being able to do that, who are creative, who are, from an innovation standpoint, innovation that is not always new, but innovation around processes, work processes, whatever it may be, who understand the business better than anybody else could hope to from an IT standpoint. Anybody. That's the way I see it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. You've been great. I appreciate it.
Do you want me to say something?
Yes, we have both.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you talking to us. Lovely. We are now retiring to the Weiler Lounge.
The Weiler Lounge reception, everybody's welcome. Please join us. Will do.